What's up? What's good? It's Tim O in your hood. Thank you so much for joining us on Mr. Meaningful Work Retain, a big energy conversation about engaging and retaining your people. You are about to witness a conversation that I have with an HR Tech VIP. Carolyn Peer is the founder of Humaxa, and Max, who is a digital assistant that prevents employee turnover by providing personalized solutions. Caroline is an award-winning leader with over 20 years in human capital management and was recently selected by the HR industry's premier association, SHRM, to be part of their first Workplace Tech Accelerator program. Man, I can't wait for you to learn alongside me as she shares her wisdom and perspectives on the issues of retention and turnover. But this season would not have been possible without the enthusiastic support of our sponsor, Spark, who is changing the game in engagement and recognition. With Spark, you're able to optimize results with the power of Spark's AI-driven solution to create recognition and reward experiences as unique as your employees. Anna and her team are deeply passionate about elevating the employee experience, and Spark customers get to reap the benefits of tapping into that passion. Request a demo, get access to a free demo when you go to sparkco.com. That's sparckco.com/Mr. Meaningful Work, and let them know that I sent you. But let us start today's show. Welcome everybody to another episode of Mr. Meaningful Work Retain. And like we said, we are here with Carolyn, who I am super excited about. She's a superstar, y'all. You guys don't even know yet. We haven't even started, and we are in the presence of greatness. She's denying it, but I'm denying her denying it because she is a superstar. So like we start off with every episode, Carolyn, first of all, thank you.
Thank you, Tim. I'm delighted to be here.
We asked the question, what are you famous for? As we all know, what are you famous for? WRUFF looks like a nice, healthy dog bark. So give us your biggest rough. Let's go.
Ruff, ruff, ruff.
With the growl. I'm telling you guys, she's fierce.
It's got to be realistic,
It
right?
has to be real, or else why do we even do it? Come strong, come correct. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So tell us, what are you famous for? What if people know Carolyn?
Well, if you have to look over my entire life, I think probably the thing that would stick out is that I'm adventurous and a risk taker. But all in good terms. You know, you have to always weigh risk versus reward. Mm-hmm. But I think throughout my entire life, I like to take risks that are worth taking.
Yeah,
nice. I think that's what I'm famous for.
Famous for being a risk taker, good risk. Not just jumping headfirst into random things for the sake of it.
For the sake of adventure, for the sake of the journey.
Yeah, yes. Nice. Yes. Are you like in the traditional sense of adventure? Like, do you like going out, like survival type of things, like hiking, diving? Yeah?
I do.
What's the craziest thing that you've done? Or one of them is probably like a bunch.
Too many. Gosh, you know.
Like swimming with sharks, like looking for Sasquatch, like what are we?
Well, let's see. I've done skydiving. I've done rock climbing. I lived in Asia for a period of time and would meet strangers, and we'd end up, having dinner. There was one time where I ended up spending an entire week on a retreat with a bunch of teachers in Korea. I mean, just crazy things.
Wow.
Like, these are people I didn't know. Yeah. We just ran into each other, and it ended up evolving that way. Like jumping in a van with a bunch of teachers that I didn't know a single person, and I didn't speak Korean. I mean, who does this stuff, right?
She does, and that's why she's famous. Well, thanks for that. And so we want to know what's hot topic, big news in your world.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, probably the hottest topic for us right now is that the organization called SHRM Society for Human Resource Management chose 6 companies to invest in this year. It's the first time they've done this, to my knowledge, and we were one of the 6. And
Let's go!
So grateful. We are so grateful.
Nice.
I mean, it's an amazing opportunity. We got to meet the SHRM board. We got to meet all the bigwigs at SHRM, and and we're headed to the annual conference in New Orleans. In
Bourbon
June.
Street, hey baby, hey baby. That's how everybody's gonna greet you down there in New Orleans. Like, how you doing, baby? You hungry,
I
baby?
can't wait to have the beignets. That's what I'm looking forward to. I mean, it's all about food. Right?
Yeah. Smuggle some out for your boy. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That is what's up. SHRM is no small deal. For anybody that's in HR, you know SHRM. And so for you to be recognized, Humaxa, your organization that's making great strides in those conversations. So give us an origin story. If we were to say, a fast-forwarded journey or fast-forwarded version of Carolyn's origin story, what would that sound like?
Sure. So I started at an early stage HR tech startup called ProBusiness. It was based here in Pleasanton.
Yeah.
And I was an early employee, not a founder. I was an early employee and got kind of a front row seat as to what it was like to work for an early stage HR tech startup.
Yeah.
I was extremely lucky.
Yeah.
The company grew and it ended up getting acquired by ADP.
Okay.
And then I ended up taking a role there, running one of their learning and performance organizations.
Nice. At ADP.
At ADP.
Okay.
So I got to really feel like, what is it like working for an early stage company in this industry, and then what is it like to work for a global 60,000 person organization?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of really good things about learning experience. It was a really good learning experience.
Yeah.
I got to really figure out, what is enterprise software all about?
Yeah.
How does it work? How do all the pieces fit together?
Yeah.
Really good company. I was used to the startup world.
Okay.
I was used to the kind of the speed of innovation that happens there. So I ended up leaving in 2017 and founded Humaxa, really based on all of those years of experience in the industry, both at ProBusiness and then later at ADP, kind of listening to clients, what they wanted to be able to do with their data, what they wanted to be able to predict, what sorts of problems they were having, and how they wanted to be able to get ahead of those problems using data. We didn't know how. We didn't know how we were going to do it. We just said, hey, let's give it a shot.
Nice. So in this HR tech startup world for a little bit, jumped into the big corporate world of ADP, and then moved back into the startup world for yourself. A lot of folks that we talk to, or in my experience with startups and businesses that are growing, is there's a problem that's identified, right? You see a gap in the marketplace, in a process, or what have you. It's like, hey, I can fix that gap, or I can address that. What was that problem or gap that you saw that you could fix or address?
Right. So I think that listening to clients talk about wanting to get ahead of problems, workforce problems that before they became problems to begin with, because they were getting blindsided. Either their top performers were leaving, or maybe it's just one person who happened to be in a really key position, or maybe there was pockets of the organization where they were struggling with job growth, or with people not feeling like they were being treated fairly, or not having opportunities like other people. And what would happen most of the time is, worst case scenario is they're going to file a lawsuit, right? Nobody wants that. Neither the person nor the company wants that. But usually there's a continuum from the very first moment that somebody feels something's not quite right, all the way over to I'm filing a lawsuit, or usually you get along that and you're like, hey, I'm just leaving. I don't want to be confrontational. I don't want to make a big stink about something. I'm just going to leave and go find another job. In today's world, of course, that's really easy to do, right? You can just go and find a new job really easily, really quickly. So what we did was we looked at, well, what data could we look at to be able to predict and prevent these problems that would both help the employee and the employer. So
you're hitting both sides.
Exactly. How could we make it meaningful for the employee to be a part of this process, but also be able to have this rich, authentic data to give back to the employer,
Nice.
so that whatever little inkling of a problem is hiding just beneath the surface, you can surface it ahead of time and just make sure it's nipped in the bud.
Nice, nice. So there was a need or a desire to be proactive,
Exactly.
right? A lot of companies are on the back end, right, where they're reactive, or people are leaving. What do we do? Or, we're in this lawsuit or what have you. They're just kind of reacting to things.
Exactly.
So it sounds like you saw, like, hey, folks are really wanting to be proactive in that, and how can we help in that?
Exactly.
And both sides, right? So it's like, it's the organization that's trying to be proactive, but the employee too, the associates, the team members want to be part of that process.
Right. And I can give you a real example.
Yeah.
Actually, I can give you a few examples, but here's one. So one of our clients had rolled out an emerging leaders program.
Yeah.
Good client.
Yeah.
Good. I mean, their heart was in the right place.
Yeah.
They were trying to do everything right.
Yeah.
I think it was a highly distributed global organization.
Yeah.
Or they still are. And they just didn't do a great job of sort of getting the word out around this emerging leaders program.
They weren't socializing it as well as they could.
Exactly. And so then there's this sort of grapevine, through the grapevine, people started to hear, oh, so-and-so is in this emerging leaders program and I'm not. Why wasn't I chosen?
Yeah.
What are the requirements? Do I need my manager's permission?
Yeah.
How do I get involved? They had all these questions,
Yeah.
and I think the company didn't realize any of that was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, fortunately, they were running our digital assistant, who they could talk to anonymously, and they started talking. Hey, what is this emerging leaders program? What's going on? What, how were some people picked? What are the requirements? They had all these things, and it kind of blew up in a matter of just a few hours.
Wow.
And so their head of people operations literally picked up the phone and called me and said, hey, Carolyn, this is what's going on. We want your assistant to go point to this SharePoint site that has all the information on it. What are the requirements? How do you apply? What, do you need to be with the company for a certain number of years or whatever those were? And so we were able to set that up in a matter of a few hours.
Wow.
So all those people got their answers right away, and they felt that they were being listened to and not just left adrift.
I love it.
In an ocean on a boat with no anchor.
Absolutely. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And you see that partnership, because I think, when folks think of AI or they think of tech, and it's like, oh, they're replacing our jobs. It's like, what are we going to do?
Not doing that.
What are we going to do? If the computer's doing it, what are we going to do? But you see that it's like, it's helping, and then you still have to do the work. You still have to engage.
Absolutely.
You still have to create the program.
Yes.
And so we kind of went around about. So we talked about the need, the gap.
Right.
We talked about, you gave a very good example of a use case, right? An example of how that helps. So talk to us. Let's go back to the middle.
Yes.
Now talk to us about the product. What is Humaxa? Like, what is it that your organization does?
Right. So we provide an anonymous digital assistant that's there to have a safe place where employees can talk, get answers, find solutions, all without having to identify themselves. And then the employer can use it to find out how people feel about certain things, to be able to offer up solutions. When COVID-19 popped up, they had a whole slew of things they wanted our assistant to talk about. Do you feel safe at work? Are people, monitoring social distance? Are the cleanliness procedures working? They had so they were able to add these into the repertoire of what Max can talk. Max is the assistant. What the assistant talks about, so that they could get instantaneous feedback about how things are working, and then again direct people to solutions if they're not feeling comfortable. What are the things that would maybe make people feel safer at work, feel like maybe we need more cleaning stations, or we need to spread out the desks more. Of course, that's kind of, we hopefully have moved past that now, but just an example of how you can get really quick, instant feedback solution. That's what we do.
Wow. And so do you see that folks are more receptive to this type of technology of like, hey, I have something to say, or I have a question, or I have a grievance, or what have you?
Sure.
Well, let me go to the computer and like talk about it, versus I don't know if my data is really anonymous, or I'd rather what's the reception that folks are having with that?
Right. So I think the topic we're talking about is trust, right? And trust is something that we can talk about from a technological standpoint until we're blue in the face.
Yeah.
But trust is a behavioral aspect. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily a technical aspect.
Yeah.
And so before we built anything for Humaxa, we actually did a ton of research on how willing would people be to talk with a computer.
So you thought about that already. Yeah.
Well, we had to, because you have to know whether people are going to use it before you spend all this time building it, right? So we looked at, there was a couple of different studies that we looked at. One was out of the University of Southern California. And it was done, people were returning from overseas. They had been in Afghanistan, military that was coming back, and they were suffering from PTSD. And in this study, they had divided the group into two different groups. And one, they were told they were talking to a person, but they were going to be talking through the computer. And the other group, they said, it's just a machine. You're not talking to a person. And so what they looked at was how willing people would be to open up and talk about these awkward topics, how they were suffering from PTSD, and then in both cases they were given resources to help, whether it would be, hey, we can make an appointment to talk to a counselor, or maybe there's some training or some support that's available, things like that. So both cases they were trying to help the person, but what was really interesting is people were twice as likely to open up about really sensitive topics and where, like, the kind of things that are hard to talk about with people when they thought it was just a machine, just a computer that they were talking to. And and of course they asked why. Why is that? And people almost always talked about, well, I didn't feel judged. I felt safe. It's not a person. It's just a computer. It's just a bunch of, ones and zeros and transistors and motherboards and whatever else is in the computer. And so they felt much more able to kind of talk about, and as a way to open the door to talking about these things. So that was one study. And then we looked at another one very deep that had to do with the medical profession. And how likely people would be to open up and talk about perhaps medical conditions that would be, in their minds, considered embarrassing or just hard to talk about with a doctor or with a nurse. And so it was actually very different, totally different topic, but very similar results. People liked being able to get the conversation going without having to identify themselves, just to get to talk to a thing versus a person, just to get the ball rolling. And then eventually, of course, it's going to help them determine, how urgent is this? What kind of a doctor? How, where you might go to get the next step? Where's more information? And they can do all that without having to identify themselves or even talk to a person. Which is, so of course we looked at that and said, well, how can you extrapolate out and make that something in the workplace? What are the things that are hard to talk about in the workplace? I don't feel like I'm being treated fairly. I don't think that, the way that promotions work are really working here. Or I'm stressed out. My manager just keeps piling on more and more and more work. Or, gosh, there's something going on at work that really is just hard to talk about. Being able to surface those things often will be able to predict these kind of problems that makes people want to leave. Or, worst case scenario, obviously it was a lawsuit or something like that.
Wow.
So that's what we did.
I have so many tentacles of questions coming through that, I want to touch on. But before we do that, you mentioned trust. And, one of the things that we have found is that part of building trust is feeling recognized. Right? And being recognized in a way that is custom to you, right? Not everybody wants general praise, in front of everybody. And so our sponsor for this podcast, Spark, they specialize in engagement and in recognition and sparking folks, right? So if I was to ask you, like, what are ways that you personally like to be recognized that builds trust with either your team or the folks that you work with? What does that look like for you?
It's funny you ask this, because I think most people would look at how I personally like being recognized and think that that's like the most horrible thing in the world. So, but you make a really good point, and we see this in our data too. Is if someone feels overlooked, like what really works for one person doesn't work at all for somebody else, and then it's very unique for each individual person. So for me personally, especially when I worked at not a startup, at a big company, the way I like to be recognized is to be given a really important, big, hard to accomplish assignment.
Oh,
that was what I liked.
I want a big job. Me, please. Put me on it, coach.
Cuckoo.
Wow. Nice. So it shows that you're being trusted, right? It shows that you can take on bigger responsibilities.
Or just that, gosh, this is something that we believe Carolyn could handle and could take on. And,
nice.
And it's very unique. So like I said, there's something that's a little bit wrong out here. You just have to know. You just have to know.
Yeah. So for anybody that's listening, if that's your style, you're not alone, right? We have somebody in here, and then it goes back to the big, like the risk taker, right? It's give me the big things. That there are folks that resonate in that way. But as we talk about retention and we talk about engagement and the role of the leader in engaging their folks, like, hey, we want our people to stay, we want to reduce turnover, and all these different things. Oftentimes, they're confronted with the fact that you have to have these hard and awkward conversations with your associates. Things that may not be technical or related to the job specifically, things that are mushy and emotional, like all those types of things. So my question is, we have this technology, we got Max that can take those conversations. What would you say to these, like, oh, cool, well, I don't have to have those conversations anymore. Let's just have the AI have those conversations.
No. Not off the hook. Not off the hook.
So talk to us about, balancing that as a leader.
So one of the things we learned actually from one of our clients really early on is they wanted to be able to have a person step in when the time was right.
Okay.
When, the Max, the assistant, is really just a way to get the door open, to get people to talk about, burnout and overload and stress and fairness at work and things that are, hard to talk about. But it's just a first step. It's just a way to get the door open. So let's say, and this is also a real example. So one of our employees at one of our clients worked at or still does work at an organization that it hires predominantly military spouses.
Okay.
And they have to pick up and move a lot because they keep getting, deployed in different places. Yeah. And it can be hard to find work for the spouse because they keep having to move around. Now it's a little bit better, but anyway, at the time. And so this person wrote to Max and said, I hope somebody is listening to me. I haven't made a single friend in 5 years. I'm lonely. I have no one to talk to. It's making me feel depressed, and it's affecting my job performance. I mean, all that in a quick little conversation, anonymous conversation. Yeah. And it was very strong and very negative. Yeah. So it pings the admin of the system and says, hey, go pay attention. Yeah. You need to go take a look at this. Yeah. I mean, you can look at everything, even though you can't see who is saying things, but you can see what is being said. Yeah. But this was one where the I think it was the head of HR, reached out to this person anonymously. Yeah. And through Max, Max facilitates a live anonymous conversation between two real people. So that's how you can get in.
You still have to have those conversations.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And then we hope that eventually you get to a point where the people can just get together and just open up and talk. Yeah. But it's a progression, and that way it doesn't feel so overwhelming to go to your boss and say, I'm struggling. I need help. You know, you don't know necessarily what the repercussions of that are going to be. So yes, it's just a way to get going.
Ooh, I love that. You can't see, I got goosebumps. Like, that is such a powerful thing because, you know, as leaders, like, we know the importance of building an environment where folks feel psychologically safe, right? We want to be able to have an environment where folks can speak their mind and bring their whole selves to work. And now that folks know that there is infrastructure or technology where they can do that and say, hey, I may not feel necessarily comfortable talking to a person about this, but I still need to bring my whole self, all of my feelings, all of my struggles, and know that it is being heard.
Yes.
Right?
Exactly.
In a non-judgmental, results-focused way, non-punitive, action-oriented.
Exactly.
Right?
And it's immediate. So you don't have to wait for somebody to have time to talk with you or schedule a meeting. It's 24/7, 365. Something can happen as a result of what you're talking about.
Wow. The world is moving so fast. The world is moving so fast. How do you, I mean, being an HR tech or being in tech in general, with the advancements and things that just, you know, constant innovation, how do you make sense of it all? How do you kind of stay sane in the midst of all of the stuff that's going on?
You're making some pretty big assumptions here. Like she actually is sane.
We're still establishing a baseline that she is sane. But how do you keep up with it?
I mean, in some ways you can't, you know, it's just you do the best you can. You're trying to figure out what new thing is coming, you know. There's NFTs and, you know, there's gamification and we're trying to figure out, like, how do you weave that into the, you know, to encourage people to open up and share and get really authentic feedback going between a person and a machine and then also person to person, right? So I mean, I don't have the answers. I just keep reading and trying to see what's coming. And I think, you know, most people who love technology and love innovation are always trying to figure out, there's always got to be a better way, you know? And how do we keep that in mind, but then also make sure that everything we're doing makes sense and, you know, remains ethical and all these other, you know,
considerations there.
Exactly.
I love it. Well, let's ask this final question. So our audience, HR leaders, people leaders in different organizations, what advice as it relates to retaining your people, engaging your people, if you were to have one billboard piece of advice for folks, what would that be?
The thing that I see with leaders within HR, who are concerned about retention and performance and all these things, is that, you know, you see in the news, it's, you know, forcing people to come back to work, or that's going to be the one thing that's going to make a difference, or maybe it's bumping everybody's salary up. Oh, well, that, you know, that'll be the thing that will really work, or having a really fun activity once a month. That'll be the thing that works. Like, you know, what I see is people putting these things out there, which is great, and they're going to work for a certain percentage of the organization. But it's never a one size fits all. And so to hyper personalize what that is that's going to really work for each person. I'm sure if someone went to Carolyn and said, oh, you know, let's give her a really hard, big assignment, that'll be the thing that'll really work. Like, nobody's going to say that or think that because
it's not,
right? So I think it's just, that's the one thing that we've seen in all of our data. And, you know, trying to find that win-win situation that's going to help both the employer and the employee is critical.
You have to personalize it. You have to customize it. And I think the beauty of technology is that you can do that at scale. Right. I think it's scary to think me as one manager and I think at this point I have like 11 direct reports. Right. And it's like, I got to customize 11 experiences and engage with them. Like, it's like, that's your job as leader. But you can have technology that helps to figure out some of those nuances,
Sure.
For those folks, and then you can engage based on that.
Well, and then
Yeah.
you can spend your time doing the really important
Yes.
stuff,
Yes.
the helping build their career,
Yeah.
making the right introductions,
Yeah.
getting them the right assignments,
Yeah.
and making sure that they're recognized when
Yeah.
they've done something phenomenal.
Yeah.
You can spend your time on the good stuff,
Yeah.
and then have everything
Yeah.
else be.
Let Max do everything else.
Let
yeah.
Max do the admin stuff that you don't want to do.
Yeah. Nice. Well, Carolyn, thank you so much. Again, I'm trying to be conscious of time, and I know folks are busy. And I have, again, like 5 or 6 tangentially, like we can go, and then we might have to come back for part 2, Carolyn part 2 on another season of Retain. But what's the best way that folks can get in touch with you, get in contact with you, see the stuff that you're working on?
Sure. So, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn, Carolyn Peer. My email is carolyn.peer@humaxa.com, Humaxa. You can find us at www.humaxa.com.
Yeah.
Pretty easy.
Yeah.
We'd just
Nice.
love to connect and
Nice.
have a conversation.
Yeah, and if
Always.
you're around SHRM, you're probably going to see a lot of come and see Humaxa. So thank you, everybody. Appreciate your time. If you have any feedback on retention, on some of the things that your organization is going through, some best practices that you have come across, or just feedback on the questions and how we engage with our guests, please let me know. Tim at MrMeaningfulWork.com or on LinkedIn, you know where to find us. Join us for another episode next time on Mr. Meaningful Work Retain. Peace. We out. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I would love to hear from you on what you found helpful from today's show, or if you have someone in your network that you would like to recognize or spark, shoot me a message at tim@mrmeaningfulwork.com, or leave a comment on the show content on LinkedIn, or send me a tweet at Mr. Meaningful Work. That's work with no O. Thank you again, and go inspire someone today.